Stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Be seated. Ms. Williams, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Burns.
Here.
Mr. Walters.
Here.
Ms. Bolton. Here. Ms. Meister. And Mr. Williams.
Here. Motion passes 4-0. And before we go any further, I'd like to make an announcement that Ms. Meister is ill tonight, so we need a motion to excuse her absence for tonight.
I'll make that motion.
So it was, motion was by Mrs. Bolton and second by Mr. Williams. Is there any further discussion? Would you call the roll, please?
Is that a technical thing or is that a cell phone thing?
I think it's a technical thing.
Yeah, it's coming through the mic up there. It's vibrating
It's vibrating.
a little bit, yeah.
Uh, I'm just thinking, which one would be feeding back?
I don't know.
Is there any
There's a
speaker on
microphone
the
up on the
computer?
stand.
The speakers are actually attached to that balloon. It's all through Bluetooth.
Do you have anything on your, sometimes at work, the laptops will mess up the audio in meetings.
Let me see if I turn my phone off. That makes any difference. I'll give you a picture there first. Then I'll turn it on.
That's what all the kids do.
Are you-
What is the function of that thing? Because it is speaking.
What they
Is that still happening out there?
The green one, I think, is one thing that's feedback.
This is.
That's the speaker that picks up the sound.
Well, if you got sound through here, it might be.
Yeah, but you got,
It's nothing back here.
It sounds like it's coming from over there.
Why don't we try this part without the microphones on for a moment?
all right.
Oh, where's the speaker system?
It's up to the ceiling.
Yeah. It sounds almost like one of
We have
Yep.
Oh, the top of the tile might be right there.
the tile is on.
Well, let's try this without the speakers. We'll figure it out later. Okay, we're gonna start off with the swearing in of
Well,
Sheila.
we still need to vote on Jerry. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
That's my fault. I interrupted.
Once again, do I have a motion to excuse Ms. Meister's?
We've got, yeah, I know
It's
that.
live.
Yeah.
Roll call.
Call the
Yes.
roll, please.
Mr. Burns.
Yes.
Mr. Walters.
Yes.
Ms. Bolton. Yes. Mr. Williams.
Yes. Sheila, you want to come forward, please?
Shoot.
And you can just repeat after me. Start off with I, raise your right hand, please.
I, Shayla Jennings,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I shall support the Constitution of the United States
that I shall support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
and the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
and that I shall faithfully, honestly, and impartially discharge the duties
and that I shall faithfully, honestly, and impartially discharge the duties
of the, I'm sorry, of, you handed me the wrong one. Yep, I'm sorry. The duties of the member of the Cleves Village Council
a member of the Cleves Village Council
for the Village of Cleves, Ohio,
for the Village of Cleves, Ohio,
for the term ending December 31st, 2025,
for the term ending December 31st, 2025,
to which I have been appointed.
to which I have been appointed.
Congratulations.
Shayla, can I get a picture real quick?
This is dangerous when I don't have my glasses.
You need to buy a spare pair and keep them right
Yeah,
up there.
I have
Yeah.
glasses. I just don't normally wear glasses. Okay, Rob, I'm gonna ask this question. Sir, can we do a motion to put all of the minutes together? In other words, can we just do a consent? Do we have to do each one of these separately?
Only if they're totally separately.
They're all minutes on different meetings. I'm just asking the question, can we make one motion?
Catalog. Yeah.
Yes.
Catalog.
Yeah, so I'd like a motion that we take to approve the council minutes for March 13th, March 27th, the grant meeting on March 27th, the second public hearing of the CDBG held on April 4th, and a motion to approve the minutes for the April 6th special council meeting. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Walters,
I'll second.
second by Mrs. Bolton. Any further discussion? And Sheila, you'll need to abstain on this one because you weren't here for this. Go and call the roll, please.
Mr. Burns,
Yes.
Mr. Walters,
Yes.
Ms. Bolton,
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
You
Okay,
should
at this point-
probably say, you need to probably let Sheila say
Oh, I'm
abstain.
sorry. You're correct.
Abstain.
One abstention.
We've had that point before, and we decided that it was not a required abstention even if you were completely ignorant of it.
Yeah, she could have voted yay, I think.
So I don't know when it would come up importantly, but we've had controversy on that. And if it's an issue, we should research it.
All
I
right, so
personally would abstain if I wasn't at the meeting and couldn't justify that they approved those minutes, but I get what you're saying.
each of you have the bills that are in your packet, and hopefully you've had an opportunity to review those. If you need more time, just let me know. But if you're ready, I would entertain a motion to approve the Committee Ordinance 4-2024.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Bolton. Do I have a second?
Ask a question real quick.
Absolutely.
What do we get roofed?
I'm sorry,
There's a roofing charge.
I'm not sure.
That's for waterworks. They're gonna move the roof on it. And our waterworks is.
Thank you. Looking first, I'll second.
Second by Mr. Burns. Any further discussion? Ms. Williams would call the roll, please.
Mr. Burns.
Yes.
Mr. Walters,
Yes.
Ms. Bolton.
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Okay, as at this time we do the public session, I'd like to read this, please.
Should we get Sheila?
I'm sorry.
To pay the bills?
I'm sorry, Linda. I'm trying to move on. This is a long meeting.
We have a new council member, but we're just not including her.
This is not my. I'm sorry. You'll just nudge me next time?
Yeah.
I've lost track. So did we not vote on this yet?
Well, no, she just has to mention Sheila.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
And then you get the.
Now we're good to go. Motion passes 5-0. All right, so we're getting ready to go to the public session, and I'd just like to read this for a second. The Village of Cleves Council desires its citizens to participate actively in our meetings. Each participant has 5 minutes to speak to their representatives. Speakers must give their names and address. That information will appear in the official minutes. Questions for the council should be directed to the mayor. Before ordinances and most resolutions, the topic will be discussed before it is voted on. Once the motion is on the floor and is seconded, the mayor will ask those in the audience if they have any questions before the members of the council vote on the motion. Citizens will be allowed one comment or question, and the citizen will have 1 minute to address the council. And that is just on a motion or a resolution. Those who have contacted the mayor or village administrator, right now we don't have a village administrator, will go first during the public session. We have none of those tonight. We ask our citizens to be respectful in their comments or questions, and the mayor will not allow disrespectful behavior to disrupt the proceedings. At this point, is there anybody who would like to speak before the council?
We're supposed to speak, Kurt?
Pardon me?
Excuse me, I live at 222 Mount Nebo Road. And,
Your name?
Mark Jackson. I'm just here about a abandoned house that's been there I've lived there for 8 years, and something's been supposed to be done about it, and nothing has been done about it. And like I said, I've caught kids in there trying to catch the blinds on fire, and I'm just tired of seeing it. Is there something that we can do about that house?
Well, I think I'm well aware of the house you're referring to.
Exactly.
Because I was sitting out in the audience a year or maybe 2 years ago when you came here. And I do know they tried to locate the owner of that house, and they've not been successful. I do know also a zoning official has been inside the house along with the police because of, and health department, because of the issues inside of the house. I mean, for those that are present, there's raccoons that habitate the place, other animals. So it is definitely on the radar of the village. Can I give you a timeline on that tonight? The answer is no. But yes, we are looking into that, and we have the ability to acquire that property, but that's going to take some doing. I don't know if our law director wanted to comment about that process.
Yeah.
I live at 222 Mount Nebo Road. I think it is 229. I believe it's a 4-family. Like the floors are collapsing. Like it shouldn't even be standing. The chimney's leaned over towards my house, and I've remodeled my whole house. My house was a foreclosure, and the chimney, there's like 2 bricks holding the chimney up. It's just a headache to worry about when the chimney is going to fall over on my house, or when one of the kids or whatever are going to catch the house on fire. I mean, yeah, I'm just tired of dealing with this headache. I mean,
We'll try to figure out if they didn't have any luck finding the owner.
That was last year. Okay. And while this is the first time you've been here this year, there's no question they've not been able to find it. And I know there was recent conversation about that, but there's other avenues I think we can. I want to thank you for coming in, first of all, because
Absolutely.
I know this has been a problem for you.
absolutely.
And,
Thank you.
So what I'll do is I will talk to our zoning official tomorrow, and then Mr. Merkel will start that research process, and I will visit you at the house and give you an update within the next week.
I know the owner of the place. His name is Keith McCracken. So that's somewhere to start.
Well, I know he has family in Harrison, Ohio. He has family in Indiana, and he moves multiple locations. So I have done some research on this, and so I am aware, and I actually get updates on it. I'll explain that to you later, but he's not an easy guy to track down.
No, I know that he's paying people to cut the grass, so he doesn't have to deal with me when he's there. So That's all I got to say.
I'll
I'm
stop over
sorry.
within the next week and ask, Mr. Walters.
So in the interim, because this house is deemed uninhabitable, is that a true statement?
I believe that is a true statement.
Okay, so because of our zoning ordinance, we have the right then to board that house up.
It has been boarded up previously, and I think some of it's still remaining, so yes.
Do you know the fact that it's got boarded up?
It's got a couple boards over, only the windows on the sides. It's not on like the front and all that. Like, you could still get in the doors if you wanted to. Like, it was bad enough to where I went in and screwed the door shut because of the kids. Like, it was, when I seen blinds on fire, like, I got a water hose out and sprayed the blinds off. Like, it's something that, it's definitely, after I did all the work in my house, it's a hazard. It's literally 12 feet away from my house, so.
If there's structural integrity problems, we might have more.
Well, I suggest looking at the chimney and everything else, like around there. Like, it is definitely a hazard. Like, it's definitely a hazard. So that, like I said, that's all I got to say. Sorry to.
No, you don't have to apologize.
All right.
I'll be back over, within the next week, I'll be over to visit you.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anyone else that would like to speak tonight?
Can I ask a question on that subject?
Go right ahead.
If we're having trouble locating the owner, is he up to date on his taxes?
Yes,
That was my next question. It's a way to acquire
that's been
property.
one of the problems that the village has had dealing with that individual. He has paid his taxes.
Can't you cite him for an abandonment property, you know?
Well, you have to locate and decide.
Oh,
I think that's part of the problem.
or you can't go through the court with the taxes? You can't go through the court with the, you know, where he pays the property tax?
He's already
Yeah.
paid his property tax.
I mean, the downtown office with the property tax, isn't there something that can come back on that if the property isn't maintained?
I believe,
I would suggest that.
I mean, if he pays his property taxes, he may not have an address or could have a PO box in terms of where that gets sent. Because
Right.
depending on the mortgage, if there's no, mortgage insurance and he doesn't have to escrow, then he could just pay his taxes in person. So that would be difficult to know if that was the case. I was gonna look it up.
so I also believe that the Cleves has the right to put into the paper a public notice, irrespective of the fact that the owner cannot be located. The village will do its due diligence and can do its due diligence by putting a public notice into the papers. And that is sufficient.
Yeah.
Just parameters on how long it's gonna run and that kind of stuff. It's
Irrespective.
geographical area.
Right.
Any other questions? Thank you. Anybody else want to speak tonight?
Yeah, I do. I'm Kirk Oaks and I live up on Jordan Road, 8784, and I see you at the meeting last time. Where's our water stand?
Well, it's on the agenda to be dealt with tonight, so you're gonna have to stick around and see what we do.
Do that.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, at this time, I'd like to call forward the members of the zoning appeals board, please. Come forward. I do that right on this side. I have my glasses, but I have them all in my pocket. Guys, we're gonna do this as a group. So, if you would, maybe, I think they're gonna take a picture back this way, so if you wouldn't mind, can you come around this way a little bit? So, just so the audience realizes, we've not had a zoning appeals board in the village of Cleves for over at least 3 years, probably longer. And so we needed to get residents, and we have 5 residents. One of them could not be here tonight. She's had a back injury, so we will swear her in separately. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna read the I, and we'll start with your name, your name, your name, and your name, okay? And then we'll go through the rest, and then you can follow me as I read through it with my glasses on.
You got the right paper this time?
I have the right one. Yeah. So you raise your right hand, please. I
Judy Russell,
Ted Abel,
Sylvia Stradari, Don Richardson,
do hereby solemnly swear
do
do hereby solemnly swear
that I shall support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the
Constitution of the United
and
States
the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
and the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
and that I shall faithfully,
and I shall faithfully,
honestly,
honestly,
and impartially
and impartially
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of the Zoning Appeals Board
of the Zoning Appeals Board
during the term of my office
during the term of my office
for the Village of Cleves.
for the Village of Cleves.
Thank you very much.
He gets that paper. I used to be the tallest in the picture.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, at this point, I'd like to have our zoning committee chairperson, Gary Walters, say a few words, and introduce Chris Schneider. So Gary, if you take over here, please.
Thank you. A few weeks back, I met with Mr. Schneider, who is the, I'm gonna forego what the title is.
That's okay.
I apologize. Hamilton County Planning and Zoning. For the purposes of looking at a more comprehensive zoning ordinances. And what I mean by that is that Cleves has its own ordinances and so forth, but we want to incorporate Hamilton counties as well. And they worked with North Bend, I believe, is that correct? To do a comprehensive gap analysis, and that was to isolate and identify in their ordinances what was lacking and mirror Hamilton County. So they've offered to do the same for Cleves and do that gap analysis, which takes about a year or thereabouts. It's pretty comprehensive. They take a look at ours, they take a look at theirs, and they merge them into a more comprehensive zoning ordinance. And I think that's going to be ideal, obviously on the heels of the zoning and appeals board. That, make Cleves ordinances more all-encompassing. And I invited Mr. Schneider to come this evening to talk briefly about that. So, sure. If you'd like to step up.
Yeah, doesn't matter where I stay.
Usually,
Yeah, I'll stand up, no problem. So,
Again, thank you for coming. I appreciate it.
yeah, Chris Schneider, I'm Planning Services Administrator with Hamilton County Planning and Development. And so, a couple years ago, the Hamilton County Regional Planning Commission been hearing from a lot of communities that their zoning codes were really old. In the 1960s, even the 1970s, right? That still had issues that aren't relevant today. They're still regulating things that don't exist. And more importantly, they're not regulating things that exist today. So like Airbnb type rentals or food trucks and some more modern type activities that are occurring that just are silent in the current. So the Regional Planning Commission hired a consultant to create what we call the model zoning code. It's essentially just a model zoning code that can be implemented by various communities who are interested in incorporating that. And so we've been working over the last, 6-8 months with North Bend and Fairfax, kind of the guinea pigs, if you will, of this process in their communities. And that process has looked like meeting with them multiple times in that process, looking at their current code, identifying what's missing, what really needs to be in a code of today's standard, and then merging the two together. What the result isn't a Hamilton County code that Cleves has, it's the Cleves zoning code. That's what would be happening. It'll be the North Bend zoning code that they get. And so we're happy to help North Bend, Fairfax, and as we kind of roll through this process, other communities in Hamilton County that are interested in this process. And so this new model code it's very user-friendly, has lots of images, lots of graphics. Older codes are really word heavy. So you're trying to understand what's the height of a building when it says it's all written out in a paragraph form, when it's much easier if there's just a picture of a building that shows most people are visual learning type people. So using lots of images and graphs, lots of charts, condensing things. But ultimately, it would be the village's zoning code when it's finalized. It's not Hamilton County code, it's something that the village, North Bend, Fairfax, when they're ready to finalize that building for them. So we're in the process right now of wrapping up North Bend and Fairfax, probably a couple months away from that. And then when that will wrap up those two communities, we would have the capacity as our staff to begin exploring other communities who are interested in this process. And so Mr. Walters asked, and Mayor Burkholz asked me to attend tonight, just to give a brief overview of that and help answer any questions that council might have. Yes.
You still have the autonomy to alter down the road.
Correct.
It's our code, so
Correct.
we can make addendums or changes to it, correct?
Absolutely. And it would still be, managed by the village. In North Bend's case, they actually contract with Hamilton County to do their zoning, but their council are the ones who make the final decisions on any changes to their code.
Is there a cost involved?
No cost. So that's a positive. It's just a service that the regional planning commission and the planning partnership are providing to communities who need it. That's kind of the part of being no cost is, we were able to do only 2 at a time, and it's just going to take time to get through all of them. So, but yes.
How long does this process take usually?
Well, North Bend and Fairfax are the first 2 that we're doing, and we're wrapping up, and we probably began August of last year. So it's taken them about 8 months to really go through the entire process. We figured out what we're doing through this process, so it might not take quite that long because we're
You're
not.
learning as you go.
Yeah, exactly. Working on the teams, we have our staff they're the zoning officials at Hamilton County are currently going word by word through the model to make sure that what are the unintended consequences of what is the code, right? We don't want to do something that's not good, so just double check. So by the time we get done with these communities, that process will be done. So hopefully it'll be much more smooth and easy for future communities.
If you identify what we don't have in this gap analysis, what I call a gap analysis, say, for example, the Airbnb,
Yeah.
do we need an ordinance then to incorporate that, or if they locate 30, 40, even 50 or more, can it all be done into one ordinance to make it one comprehensive for Cleves, or they all have to be introduced individually?
I think you would adopt a whole new code that they put together
Yeah, so
for the village of Cleves.
I don't know the details on the ORC requirements on how a zoning code is adopted because we haven't quite gotten there yet with one of these things. But there's going to be a process of eventually, hopefully, North Bend and Fairfax saying, their council saying, the current code is no longer in, the new code is in, there's an approval and adoption. I don't know what that process looks like, but it's something along those lines. You have a question?
As far as our zoning map, would you say have anything to do with the zoning map at all? Or was that something Cleve's gonna have to do as far as correcting the zoning map?
We could talk about updates to the zoning map. Typically, with this process, we're trying not to do map amendments related to the zoning. We would have to match up the current zones with the model code and do an analysis of that. And if, we determine there's discrepancies there, then that's a conversation to have on how to deal with that.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Can you give an example of something they dropped or added? Your early adopters, what didn't you plan for that they thought was interesting or they weren't interested in?
I don't know if there was anything that we hadn't already considered that when we presented it to them, but food truck regulations are a popular item to have, specifically around the time and the location. where they're, how long they can be there. And second, like accessory dwelling units, like having a second smaller house above the garage in the backyard kind of thing. And allowing that, or not allowing that. It's really up to the community to decide if that's what they want or don't want. We're just here to provide you with some guidance on that language and what it could look like. And then ultimately, we'll be able to decide, yeah, we want that or we don't want that. But it needs to be regulated in some way. And then North Bend has a unique riverfront zone that nobody else has. And so that's kind of a little wrinkle in the North Bend model code, is that they're going to end up having this unique riverfront park zone in their code that is really going to be just specific to that.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Chris.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm happy to answer your questions later. I'm not sure we'll be speaking. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, Kevin, you want to give us maybe an overview of the public hearings?
Yes, I feel like I'm summarizing the same thing a few times. I'm tempted to experiment with this, but I will quickly abandon it if it starts working. So how about that? All right. It may be a problem that there's multiple on at a time. I don't know. Different points in the previous meeting and several public meetings since, we've discussed the CDBG grant opportunity that is a federal program that runs through Hamilton County as kind of a conduit for distributing the funds. They published the rules for application for this cycle, a very crunched timeline. And we have responded to that with getting our meetings in on their timetable or as permitted in their timetable. The CDBG grant it's a housing and urban development grant. It's intended to improve communities through housing stock or community assets. It can be used in low-income areas, and as defined by the Census Bureau, and it can also be applied to parks. In Cleves, it can only apply to the communities west of Route 50 if it weren't going to be in a park. Most of our discussions have focused on improvements to the park. In our two public meetings, first was to solicit raw public input. We collected ideas from the attendees and also presented ideas that the Parks Committee and other members of council have developed through the near past. Community feedback seemed to center around about three things. One was sidewalk improvements leading into the park on Lower River Road. Some were for shelters in the new playground area, and some were for ADA equipment. Some of those are priorities that were already shared by the Parks Committee, and I then explained several other things that could be done, including was actually mentioned by the community, but sports facilities improvements, walking paths, installations of new fields or facilities. And ultimately, we took a straw poll from council about what the priorities ought to be, because in our next meeting, we're obligated to tell the community roughly what our plan of action is. And council identified that shelter, the sidewalk idea from Lower Miami River Road, and ADA compliant, that is ADA compliant installations for the playground with a focus on wheelchair accessible features as the priorities. We then expanded upon that in the second meeting, and we are currently behind the scenes kicking around the plausibility of of each of those ideas, given the likely budgetary constraints of the grant, which is about 50,000. That may be expanded upwards based on how many people apply, or how many communities apply, but it's a big unknown. The principal feature of our plans, which are due April 30th with the grant application, are that we have to intend to actually build the thing. It's a shovel-ready projects kind of grant. So we will be working on those features. Sorry, there was one refinement in the time since. We had already had other plans for sidewalk installation on that stretch of road in coordination with road improvements. So council deprioritized that concept. But we're still trying to figure out the best way to apply for a shelter and wheelchair accessible equipment that we can actually afford to put into this grant or supplement with other funds that we have. There is no final draft of that from our consultants, but the idea will have to be well formed by April 23rd, which is when the consultants who will be writing the grant, that's JMA, need to, they need that at least 1 week to actually formulate the text and images of the grant. That is what's going on and what we have done in our previous 2 meetings for that purpose.
Any questions from council? Any questions from the audience? If you still have input that you want to provide, you still have an opportunity to do that. You can email me at our website. And also, I'm sure Mr. Burns would entertain any suggestions that you would have also. But it's been a lot of work that he's put into that, and the council spent a lot of time on trying to do this the right way, and hopefully we'll get the larger amount, because we have good use for it in our parks. That brings us on to our next issue, and where's Daniel Gilligan? If you come up here to the podium for a second. I want to make everybody aware, if you are not aware, our former village administrator, Mr. Rahal, operated the parks for a number of years. And one of the things he asked me to do right after he decided to retire was to hire a parks manager. And his recommendation to me was Daniel Gilligan. And I proceeded to interview him, spent a lot of time with listening to his ideas about the park. I know he's invested in it. He's worked for us in the past. If you haven't noticed the painting of the curbs that are happening already, he's been out doing that. I actually got called at the ball game the other night wanting to know who the guy was working at 7:30 at night. There's a lot of responsibility to running that park. And he and I spent a great deal of time talking about some of the issues that they've had in the past involving when they have bigger crowds. And so I think he has some really good ideas on how to address that. I think he also has some good ideas on how to bring more activity into our park. And I don't know if you want to talk about the one you were talking about as far as the spring of the year, but maybe you could give our council an idea of the leagues that you're going to be contacted for the spring, and maybe they'll have some reaction to that too.
So what I've been looking into, and I've asked in the past, is about getting lacrosse, which has become bigger and bigger over the last few years, into the park in the spring, which would be nice. And then we have a spring sport other than baseball that only uses fields to practice, that we don't charge at all. So that'd be nice. And also looking into spring soccer leagues to try to get them down there. Doesn't matter how many years, it's just as long as someone's down there, that'd be a lot better than just sitting with nothing in it when it's not playing.
I've also asked him to help out as far as cutting the grass and maintaining the fields out there. And he'll be responsible, if you allow him to be responsible for this, he'll be locking up the parks at night. And we've also addressed the way of making sure that we have the passes accounted for appropriately and how we're going to turn the money in. Those are going to be a double check system. In the past, Daniel would turn in a receipt to Mr. Rahal, but on the other side of it, he didn't get to see a receipt coming back. That should be happening. I discussed that with Mr. Bolton. And so this year, our clerk, Penny Williams, will be the person who sort of the double check along the revenue side of this. And Ms. Ozer and I talked, and she's got her all set up to make the deposits directly into the bank, so we're not sitting down here in a locker. So I think he also has some pretty good ideas about food trucks. We heard about that in the zoning side of this tonight, and other activities that he would like to see. And he is going to be attending the parks meeting, so those ideas can be presented there too. Do you have any other comments you want to say before I turn it over to council to ask you questions?
I just look forward to working with this council and Parks Committee to make our park better for our citizens.
Anybody from council want to address any question or concern they would like to ask them?
I have questions.
Sure.
You and I talked about if he's going to be actually counting money, we're gonna get him bonded, correct? Okay. Since we're creating a position basically that does not currently exist, we should probably do that by resolution or ordinance officially.
Isn't that what the job description was that Mike handed me, was the park manager?
He was the park manager. Did he give you something?
He actually did.
Were you the park manager last year?
Ray Hall called me his quote unquote park coordinator, but I just counted the money at the end of the day and told him when people were working. He did the rest of it.
Yeah, that's, I'm just wondering if, I don't wanna hold anything up, because he was definitely an employee last year, so he worked for us in this capacity of some sort last year. You wanna increase what he did last year and add duties and responsibilities, so I don't wanna hold anything up, but I would like Rob to weigh in on whether he thinks we should have some kind of an ordinance officially creating the position, not the old administrator thinking he had a park coordinator.
You can.
And establishing a rate.
You can. You might want to do it by resolution, so that it's not carried forever. I mean, if you want to change it, a resolution to do that. With an ordinance, you got to enact another ordinance, appeal or repeal the current one, things like that.
Well, I don't want to hold anything else up you were planning to do, but we can make things official, so to speak.
And I'm not opposed to that. In fact, Linda, I think you and I talked about the fact there was almost too much freedom to do whatever the administrator wanted to do. For those that are not aware out in the audience, that when you have a village administrator, most of the time, I don't know that the council ever knew who was being hired or at what rate. That pretty much was in his area or domain. Personally, I don't think if we go forward with a village administrator, you gotta just leave it that way. You can say to the village administrator or the mayor, I wanna see who you're hiring, I wanna know how much you're offering them to be paid. I think that's a very legitimate comment, Linda, that you're making. I'm certainly not opposed to doing what you're talking about.
I think what would be smart about it is that you could identify who that person reports to. And that way it kind of stays intact. Can't have someone come in and say, well, I don't do that, or I don't do this. I just think it would make more sense because you are creating a new position.
And I agree with you. And the one thing that Rob and I talked about at the time was whether we needed to post for this position. We were looking more of it as being a promotion. But I'm not opposed to you guys hammering out a job description and voting on it and making it just the way you want it. I think that's a good way of approaching it.
I know there's an increase in salary involved here, and I don't really want to hold that up. So I don't know what's best to do in the meantime.
Well, why don't we ask Daniel? Daniel, you got to give us a little time to work on this and come up with a job description and a resolution. I mean, it won't be till next month, but I mean, could we make that a retroactive?
I would imagine you could make it retroactive.
So it would be just waiting until we got this finalized as a council. And then once they have it finalized, they would vote on that at that point in time. I don't hear any objections from anybody on council about you being the person. So are you willing to wait that long?
Well, you would get your pay. What would be retroactive would be the difference between the new pay and what you've received since X amount of days. Your title would change, and retroactively, you would get paid just the difference between the new salary and what you're working at now.
If that's what you guys want to do, as a safety net, that's fine. Doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, I think it's probably a good move for the village to go that route. And then as they proceed down the road, if they decide to have another village manager, that's already in place and the council's already approved it. So can we table this till?
I mean, I'm in favor. I just would like to see a resolution drawn up with clear duties, especially duties that require him to be bonded, you know, like the money issue. And you said something, you were adding other things.
Yeah, he's gonna be locking up the park.
Hiring, you
Yeah,
want
he's
him to be able to
I
hire his
want him
workers.
involved because quite frankly, he'll be making a recommendation. I mean, I think when we were talking about it, he was sort of surprised that I was going to have him involved in the interview process. And because that had not been allowed before. But I think when we're hiring people, it's best that they're invested in pleasing the person who hired them. And so based on the conversations he and I had, he had pretty good workers. It wasn't a question of that. But there was things that he would like to have seen that maybe wasn't some of the expectations that he would like to have seen. So I think we can work out all those details. And Kevin, you had sort of like you wanted to ask a question. I'm trying to get it on your cues here now.
Well, I frequently have the furrowed brow, I admit. So question one, I think we just alluded to it, but what are we actually voting on?
We're not voting on
creating a
anything
full-time,
right now.
okay, next month, are we voting on creating a full-time position? Because
It's not full-time.
Okay.
It would be a seasonal position.
Part-time
And we'd like to cap it, Linda and I talked about this, cap it under 32 hours a week, so we're gonna have to manage some of that time.
Can we discuss this at the next finance meeting?
Sure
maybe?
can.
I was about to say that would be appropriate.
That
And-
makes sense to
Okay,
me.
but part-time and seasonal does more closely reflect the old job description. If the idea was that this was basically an FTE, then we'd really be doing something different. And the old one would not apply if that's what had been discussed in whatever circle was. So that is the information that I wanted to add. But I think that's it. Thank you.
So we go ahead and table it, and we go back to finance and that?
I would like to just have an ordinance, or a resolution prepared.
Not a problem. Daniel, thank you very much for coming tonight. Well,
We'll get you a nice moment next time.
You
want me back next one?
Yeah, I think you ought to come back next time.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's fine.
He is just such a nice guy, though. I don't think he'll get mad at me. If he does, I don't care.
Next, I'd like, Linda is our finance committee chairperson, and everybody should have gotten an email from John Knuff, who's on vacation out in Connecticut right now with family. He did not like at least his guys did not like the John Deere mower. Felt like he was gonna maybe slip, didn't feel comfortable about the stability of it. And so instead of that one, he wants to go, there's a new copy in your packet. So Linda, I don't know if you want to discuss this or how you want to proceed with it, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, I was looking for that information and struggled to find it. I don't know. Okay.
That's it.
This one's Zimmer, I believe.
Was it the same one we were talking about in finance? 'Cause
Yeah,
I got
there was
confused.
one that was $2,000, I think, more.
Yeah, this was 12,000 something.
Yeah, that was the John Deere.
This one's 14.
He does not want the John Deere.
It's a, can I have that? Thank you. So this one was a little more than what we had originally talked about.
Yeah, he actually they brought a demo out on the John Deere, so this one's exactly like what they got. They're gonna be trading in, the old mower, so that there's actually an auction. And you usually make more money in the auction than you do if you just trade it in, so that's what the plan is.
Okay, because he mentioned that they had it on loan.
That's the demo, that was the John Deere.
Okay. I thought, okay. Yeah, I mean, we discussed it and it was brought to finance that we would be using TIF funds for this zero-turn lawnmower. And it would be used wherever the maintenance department needed to use it. And they need one. So, finance committee at the time supported taking this to council. So I don't know if anybody has any specific questions.
The trade-in value for the old one, is that reflected in that deduction and cost of the new one?
I don't know.
Yeah. Because they're gonna go to an auction, so whatever we get, will go back into our funds. So there's no trade-in to like Zimmer. I forget exactly what site that you guys use, it's over at Hamilton County, I believe. Yeah, it's a lot of the municipalities, townships, they use the Hamilton County auction site. And everything I've heard about it, it's far beyond what you would normally get in a trade-in.
Yeah.
So they sell it for 500, that 500
Comes back.
Comes back.
Okay, so it doesn't really come off of this, it's just, it's like.
It's coming back.
Because it's not Zimmer selling it.
I
So I would like to make a motion that we purchase this Skag
That's what it's called.
zero turn, 62-inch velocity deck mower for the cost of $14,054, and TIF funding will be used.
Do you have a second?
I'm sorry, I do need to ask one more question. Did we competitively bid this?
John's the one who went out and got the bids. I'm not sure it reaches the level of where you have to bid this out. But I think from the standpoint of what he normally does is he goes out and tries to find the best price he can find. And so if you're looking for a formal bid process, do we publicize it and things like that? The answer is no.
Is there any warranty on this?
I believe there is, but I can't answer you what that is. John would have been had it been here. Do you want me to see if I can contact him to find
No, I
out?
would assume there would. I think the X marks in the Skag, that's $500. Oh, I know the X mark definitely does, the Skag, right there.
So it's an hour's warranty?
Yeah.
How many
Yeah,
hours?
hours.
Because it's used enough. It's got an hour count on it.
Correct.
What I would ask is, do we have reason to believe John is confident that this mower does not have the same deficit that the John Deere does?
Well, there's definitely a difference in size and balance. Because I looked at both of them, because when I went over there, John was not there when I went there, but the Norm, he told me right out, he didn't like it, didn't think it was a very good mower. He wanted one that was like this because he felt safer on it. So if you were to put it side by side, you just have a newer model. So it's almost identical to the one that they currently have. But the answer is that we can wait on this too. It's not something critically that has to happen.
Well, we're entering into the season of cutting grass. How old is the old one?
Well, he said it's on his last leg. So John said if it lasts a year, that's about all we're going to get on this one. It's, they start breaking down and you got to do repairs on it. So I don't think it's anything that has to be done tonight, but I know it needs to be done soon.
Well, council meets once a month. I don't know if this warrants delaying the purchase of this lawnmower for another month. That's my personal feeling. We can always take a vote, and if someone feels uncomfortable, they can vote no. Otherwise, we can bring it back. I made the motion. And then there was another question, so it was not seconded.
I might have interrupted the second motion, for the second. I'll second that motion.
So now there's a second, so a second by Mr. Walters. Are there any other questions or discussion? Out in the public, do you have any questions or comments before they vote?
I got one.
Yes. Go
Do
ahead.
they have to go with a mower, or can't we kind of upgrade that to the tractor that has a mowing deck that would be suitable for the long
They
run?
already got that.
I
I think they used to have a tractor with a mowing deck. That's
They do.
what they had the park with.
They do.
This is for a zero turn. This is for like alongside the streets and in areas where they've got
trees.
less, yes,
Okay, okay.
yes.
All right, gotcha.
Any other questions from the public? Ms. Williams, we call the roll, please.
Mr. Burns,
Yes.
Mr. Walters,
Yes.
Ms. Bolton,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Ms. Jennings.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. All right, next one's my area. Excuse me, and Mr. Brett, I know you're back there somewhere. So I'll make a few comments. If you want to also make some comments to the council, I would entertain that also. But just to give you some background, the gentlemen that are in the back here live on Jordan Road. And they have been attending the Miami Township trustee meetings, I know, for at least 3 years. And they've had questions, and they're not the only ones on Jordan Road that had questions about the issue involving potable water. If I understand things correctly, I believe there's been some contamination of the well waters and things like that. So they don't have that in their homes. I sat there and I watched that long before I ever decided to run for mayor. Dan Blanton has been working diligently to try to get something to help out the residents on Jordan Road, not only in the area of potable water, but also for fire protection. To me, it's a moral and ethical right to have water that you can drink in your home. It's also a moral and ethical right that you shouldn't have to rely on a pumping truck to fight a fire. I don't remember your name, sir, but I do remember you talking about the fact that you felt like your property values actually were diminished because of the fact that those water lines and things have not been in place. And so there was a lot of discussion right after the start after I got elected. We had a meeting. Mr. Brett was present for that. Mr. Radall was present for it with Dan Blanton. And we discussed putting back in a pumping station down at the maintenance. And I went out with Jack Riniger, and I went out with the safety director, Jim Hughes, correct. And we took a look at a way to not have to move our recycling, because the old one, if you're going to go back to the old station, you have to do that. There was a problem where the pipe came out with where the gas tank is located. So the Miami Township trustees are going to pay for the entire cost of the installation. So this is not going to cost the village of Cleves a penny. What's going to happen is that there's going to be, and actually it was set by their attorney, not us, as far as operating hours. There's going to be a card reader, so when they go purchase water, Cleves Water Works will be paid. I think there was a point in time historically where it was an honor system, and the village felt, at least Cleves Water felt like they weren't being paid appropriately. Then I think at one point in time, the Cleves Water hired a person to sit out there and take money.
Yes,
And
I
we were-
remember that.
And we were paying money to sell water. This one eliminates that entirely. You have a card reader. It'll be open in non-business hours. So our maintenance department is not going to be inconvenienced in any way. So it's going to be on the weekends, and it's going to be in the evening after our maintenance department leaves. We have security cameras in the area. It's well lit. And so the attorneys have been working on this. And Mr. Brett, if you have anything else you might want to add, I entertain that. For those who don't know, he's the Miami Township Administrator. Thank you for coming tonight.
Good evening, and thank you for having me. Good to be back. I can't tell you guys how much I miss working with everyone here at Cleves. It was a great 4 years while I was here, 4.5, whatever it was. So, first, I'd like to thank Cleves and Mayor Burkholz for entertaining this idea. I think it's something that the folks, especially on Jordan Road, but there are some other folks in Miami Township that need access to be able to fill their water tanks. I share their pain because I don't have city water where I live. So I'm very familiar with what it takes to go find water and bring it home. So the system that we're proposing is not just a fly-by-night little system. It's a professional-made system marketed by Pentair. And so it'll have a card reader. It'll have a pump. It'll have riser with a drain. It'll have an air gap that'll meet the Ohio EPA requirements. So we think everything will be a good system for them to make sure we get clean water, no backflow from their tanks. And I really don't see any problem with it. We appreciate Mr. Merkel working with us. And I'd be glad to answer any questions if you have any.
The terms of release here on the permitted use, it says Miami Township only and related uses and for no other use. Is this not for just Jordan?
No,
only?
it would be for anybody in Miami Township that would need it.
So it's not just regulated to Jordan?
No. But as a Whitewater Township resident, I couldn't come and get a card and an access code to use the system. So that was one of the concerns that Mr. Rahal and I both shared. If we opened it to everybody, you could end up with lines of people there, because undoubtedly it always seemed to happen to me. You'd go to get water and it would be like there could have been nobody there for 4 hours beforehand. You get there and there's a line. And we didn't want people backed up onto the road. We didn't want to cause any traffic problems. We didn't want people going to the post office and blocking up their driveway. So we felt like this was the best way to protect everybody, and it's not meant to serve the general public. It's meant to serve Miami Township residents, and of course, if there's someone from Cleves, that would be a big part of Miami Township, that would be included as well.
So they would register somewhere and receive some kind of a code?
Yeah, they would have to have.
Is that at your building, or is that
That would be at our
Waterworks?
building. So, and after that, we'll work with Cindy on getting the access to the credit card reader. Actually, when we first started looking at that, I went back to the credit card company that you use because I'm familiar with them, and that's who I would have used if we were collecting and paying you. So, a lot cleaner this way because all the money goes straight to you, so you don't have to worry about it.
Is the system protected enough that somebody a car can't bang into
So we'll
it?
have to put some ballards in to protect it. So ideally, we'll probably have to run a separate electric service for it because I think John only has 100 amps in that building. So he's probably at the very minimum of what he can have for his equipment, so we'll probably have to do that. So we actually bought a pole in anticipation of this happening sooner, so that part's fine. I don't know what the lead time is on the equipment. But, the sooner the better. These folks have been waiting a long time. And, you know, they may want to have a little ribbon cutting down there on their own when they get their first load of water, and we'd be happy to see them do that.
I also noticed that you're not allowing any commercial water hauling.
That was a big concern, especially because of the traffic into the maintenance area. We had a commercial water hauler who offered to share in the cost of the system if he could use it. And then it became, how do you limit that? So that's why we limited it to just residents of the township and their commercial haulers.
Is there a limit on the number of gallons that you get per visit, or is it just?
No, wouldn't be a limit to the number, but you know, most people are going to have. I had a fairly big tank when I did my own, 750 gallons.
About 1,000 gallons.
You know, 1,000. So, but some of your 1,000 trying to be the average. And you'll have a lot of people who have the little 250 gallon tanks and a small truck. So, if you don't have teenage daughters at home, you can get by with it. I haven't bought water at my place since my daughter moved out.
Is there a way to make sure though that somebody doesn't sneak in and operate and sell the water? I mean, I guess there's no way to protect from that.
Probably not, but it would take somebody.
You would start to notice how much they were getting the
Yeah.
water.
Yeah, because we'll be able to track that.
Okay,
So,
all right.
Well, see, that's what happened before with Cleves running. These tankers were coming in. What, you think they were putting $100 bills in there? All water haulers, they weren't paying for that.
Well,
So
some of them actually went up to the waterworks and paid up with the waterworks bill. That's some of them did, I know that. I can't say all of them did. But no, they weren't dropping $100 into a payment box, but they were going to the waterworks.
And I
I'm
think
sure some of them didn't go either, I'm not saying that, but I know some did.
the old system, as I recall it, was simply a stand tank and a valve and turned it on, and it was an honor system for how much they used. So this will actually be metered, and it'll be fair to the people who are buying it, to those
the
who are
waterworks.
getting paid for it. Yeah, no, they're not asking for, you know, a system that they can scam. They're just asking for access.
Way to get water.
Yeah.
And you will be maintaining the maintenance for the system as
Correct.
well, not just the initial cost of putting it in.
All the maintenance, and I expect there'll be there's always a little overflow of things, so there'll probably be some dressing up of the ground, so we'll work that out with John. I'm sure we can use the bobcat to have some gravel dropped off as needed. We don't intend to cause him any headaches.
Has our solicitor looked at this? Oh,
No issues. And this is for a 1-year lease, or has it been on perpetuity?
It's $1 a year. I don't remember exactly how. Do you remember how long this goes?
I think it was in there at a 30-year lease. So I'm guessing that once we get water up Jordan Road, and if we see things dwindle down, then we may usually want to change that. For right now, it's there. A lot of these folks have houses that sit way back off the road, and if you don't have the ability and the plumbing license to run that line yourself, it can be expensive. So they need some time, even after we've already started talking to Derek and Mayor Merkholz about extending a line up Jordan Road to get them the fire protection. If Jerry was here, she'd tell you that these new firefighters are all spoiled. We did tanker operations forever when I was a volunteer. So, and we won't talk about how many years ago that was.
Well, yeah, like you get to my house, I heat with wood. My house catches fire, it takes 6 trucks to get to the bottom of my driveway, and then probably 2 to get up it.
We've all seen it recently on the news, just up the road in Springfield Township. House catches fire, no fire hydrants. They rely on tanker trucks to bring 750 gallons at a time, and they stand there and watch the house burn down and protect the woods. I'm just asking for the same protection that all the rest of you in this room have. We pay the same amount of tax
They do a
rate,
good job with their water.
the whole 9 yards. I would just like the same opportunities as safety.
Again,
Yeah,
the fire department trains for that, they're very good at it, and, but it's always better to have hydrants. Much easier on them, a lot less equipment required to put the fire out.
Jim, what's the footprint of this installation? Is it just a pipe that sticks out of the ground?
No, so it'll be about a 4 foot wide by 20 foot long main pump station. And then somewhere near there, that can sit off to the side. They can come in and do their card reader there. The card reader will be covered. It's the same as steel, I think, enclosure. So it'll be all factory made. There won't be anything cobbled together that looks bad. But the riser and the standpipe can go anywhere near there. So we'll be able to put that off to the side out of John's way. We'll put the standpipe wherever John and Miller decide. And so we want to make sure that this is as unobtrusive to the service department as possible.
Well, can you, I hesitate to try to connect to the TV, but do we know where this is going on that property? Because what I see is the surrounding area seems to be a private property with a fondness for excavators. It looks like our property doesn't go very deep into that.
I think
there's gravel lots to the north.
The standpipe would go somewhere near where it used to be in the,
That doesn't help.
It's right by the wall.
you're not old enough.
It's in between the maintenance building and the recycle bins, correct?
In front of the fuel plant.
They used to pull in the gravel in front of the recycle bins to get the water.
So
Now they'll be pulling in the
Right
maintenance lot.
on concrete, so.
Yeah, yeah. But can they access it the other way?
This is
Okay.
presumably ours.
So it's back in this corner behind those. I'm not feeling it doesn't show the diesel tank.
Right.
So it'll be kind of tucked in behind that, current proposal, but, it can go wherever, John.
Basically in line with that structure.
There's a small wall between here, and it used to be right up against the wall. Part of that may be what we find when we take the old one out.
Was it like a retaining wall?
Yeah.
Some kind, yeah. I remember it.
It's a line.
Our park workers worked it when we had people man.
Is there forever?
And so
Can't
none of
hide
this
it.
gravel stuff is a concern, and what we're talking about is somebody would pull into the driveway, pump, pump, pump.
Pull into the driveway, wherever.
Pull in, back out.
They could pull in, turn around, they could back in, back out. And some people will come with a small trailer. Some people will have a truck, and be a trailer or truck.
Well, he's got both.
Sometimes I use trailers, sometimes I don't.
I did the same thing,
Either way.
so.
But whatever equipment's coming into here, it's pull in, pull out. There's not logistical concerns about turning or.
No, we think there's plenty of room there for that.
Your timeline for this so that they're able to
I
start to.
I don't have a lead time on the equipment, but if you approve this tonight, the township trustees have already approved it, so
They'll order
we will
the.
probably order the equipment tomorrow. Assuming I can get a purchase order.
Mr. Brett, who's going to be the individual who's going to monitor the usage?
It'll all be automatic.
No, if you said earlier that somebody would be watching to see if there was an inordinate amount of usage by somebody, and
Oh, well, Cindy will see that based on the flows, and we will have through the key card code that they would have to enter for their use.
somebody will review that though,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that would be Cindy?
Township, right?
Well, what should we just tell them? It'll be Kim Day because we fluff all that stuff off on our office
Okay.
manager. So I'd love to sit here and tell you that it would be me and that I'd watch it, but it won't be, it'll be her.
The township employee.
Yeah.
Yes.
You have another question?
I was just actually wanting to ask the question that is, as long as if this pumping station goes in, the water going up Jordan Road isn't going to get forgotten about, I hope. Because I would like to have city water hooked up to my house so I don't have to haul water.
I can assure you it's not gonna be forgotten, but I want to remind you what I said at the other meeting at Miami Township. The water department is separate from the village of Cleves. And I've already met with Mohammed Islam, which is the same individual that Dan Blatton met with. Mr. Merkel right now is sort of the acting village administrator. He's supervising the water department. And I told Mr. Blatton they have to move. They want to get this discussion going. They probably need to get it going now. The biggest problem, from what I understand there, is just the cost factor. And I'll say this to the council, because I asked this question specifically, whether or not Mohammed Islam felt that Cleves was water, I'm talking about now, not the village, was charging too much money and to almost make it cost prohibitive. Excuse me, now he doesn't live in Miami Township, okay, but he deals with this water issue for Hamilton County. He said there's no doubt it was overpriced by Cleves. He said, but the only way you're going to prove it to them is to do some type of a study. I don't know what that study entails, but I know that's not one I'm going to get directly involved in from the standpoint of what type of study. But I'm going to go back to the same thing I said earlier. I believe there's a moral right to have fire protection. And sometimes you do things because it's the right thing to do. Maybe you don't like it, but it's the right thing to do. And we look at each other as Miami Township Cleves. We're all Miami Township. Every one of us in here are Miami Township residents. Every single one. Every one of us has a family. And one of the problems I believe that this area has had has been being too territorial. We have regional problems we're going to have to address, and they're all going to be costly. Some things we're going to win on, some things we're going to lose on. So if it were up to me, I'd say let's get going on it now. Okay? Miami Township's paying the cost. Okay? It isn't going to be the village of Cleves.
Paying the cost to
Of the
set the water lines and
the
stuff.
installation and everything. But
then why are the residents asking Cleves if Miami Township is responsible?
no, because that water line has to be moved from its current location along East Miami River Road. And for whatever, I haven't been part of those discussions, but for whatever reason, there's been resistance on the cost. And I think Miami Township has to be proven too. Just to give you an idea, over on Buffalo Ridge, the township trustees paid $1 million to put in water lines for fire protection. And that was with Cincinnati Water Works, if I'm not mistaken. And there were very few residents that tapped into those water lines, okay, because they didn't want to pay the cost.
The assessment on their taxes. Right?
Yeah. So, but that's not why they want water. They want water to make sure they have fire hydrants and they can actually fight a fire to protect their families. And, you know, it's Cleves Water handles a lot more than just the village of Cleves. I mean, they go all the way to the Indiana border. And so we're providing water, and yeah, they want to make a profit off of it. That's no question. They're not going to gain a lot of customers for doing this, but they're not really funding the cost. Miami Township trustees will be funding the cost. So this has to be worked out somehow.
Well, and just one more thing I'd like to say. We all know City of Cincinnati water stops at the top of the hill. those of us who are from around here. But not only does that happen, from the bottom off of East Miami, the first driveway you go up, they've got Cleves water. The next driveway you go up to the left, they've got Cleves water. Why are the ones of us in the middle left out? This is totally unreasonable, unfair.
It has something to do with Cincinnati Waterworks and Cleves Waterworks and boundary lines.
The biggest argument I keep
Mohammed
hearing,
Islam has worked that all out. That stuff's already been resolved.
the
But
biggest
that's not
argument,
an issue for us to try to determine today.
No, that's gonna be,
No.
no, it's not for us to
Okay.
determine at all, quite frankly.
Right, I mean, it's, yeah,
Yeah, it's just that some decision down the road is gonna have to be made, and it is probably going to require at least the council being aware of some of the decisions, okay? And, you know, we really don't have control over Cleves water. But I think from the standpoint of, I guess I'd call it moral suasion, you know, people, if they're aware of the issue, generally do the right thing. And I don't think anybody's gonna argue on this council that you don't have a right to that, to having fire protection. So we gotta get beyond the profit movement at some point and do the right thing. So, but all I can tell you is they're working on it, and I've talked to Dan. Now's the time to get moving on it. And even then, we know that we're not gonna gain water customers because of the expense of tapping in. We understand that.
You'd be surprised how many people's going to
Well,
tap.
we might just be. You never know.
I'm getting older. I'm tired of hauling water.
Any other questions out in the
can we move
audience?
toward the lease? Yeah,
Pardon?
I'd like to make movement to, if there's no other questions.
So you want to make a motion?
No, I just want to get us moving in that direction, Chuck.
Yeah. We're ready. I mean, is there any further discussion on council?
Is there an ordinance that pertains to this lease, Rob?
There is not.
So what do you need here from us?
Well, if you approve that, we can create the resolution to put it into place if the lease is approved by council.
Okay, so we're approving the lease, and at some point, are we gonna be approving a resolution then as well?
Yeah, just to keep the lease for the length of time.
Okay, gotcha.
It's just.
I didn't see a resolution ordinance, so that's why I was there.
Yeah, we were working on
That's
that
fine,
before
that's
anything.
So do we need a motion then to?
Approve is it a lease? Yeah, it's called a lease.
I make a motion that we approve the lease.
I'll
We have a
second.
motion from Mr. Walters. Do we have a second?
Second?
Second by Mrs. Bolton. Any further discussion on council? Any further comments from our residents?
I just want to say thank you.
Call the roll, Ms. Williams?
Mr. Burns,
Yes.
Mr. Walters,
Yes.
Ms. Bolton,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Ms. Jennings.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
So going
Thank
forward,
you.
If I could just
Yeah.
say one other thing, this is a good example of what we hope to see as a township, the townships and villages working together. If you had a chance to talk with them about the project North Bend, has Miami University working on?
No, I have not.
So let me just briefly, if I can, I won't take up much of your time because I know it's getting late. So North Bend had a group of students from Miami University who helped them with the park plans for their riverfront park. They're back this year and they're working with North Bend, and they're also, part of that is working with Addison, Cleves, and Township. And the most interesting thing that happens with that, the professor is also on council in Oxford. And every time he comes down, he says, I can't believe this. We've got 3 villages in the township and everybody's here and everybody's growing in the same direction. You guys have no idea how unusual that is. And I can tell you from a Miami Township standpoint, all 3 trustees think that's the way things should go. We want to work with our villages because the villages are part of the township. I'm very familiar with what goes on here and some of the council people from working with them. But my door is always open. Miami Township wants to work with the villages. If there's anything we can do, anything you need, call me. I'm here for you.
If I could just add one thing, this has been going on back in the winter when we first met. So there's actually an advisory group. They're taking a look at all the assets from Addiston, okay, all the way over to the village of Cleves. And it falls right in line with some of the parks vision, Kevin, the meeting you and I have attended. And it's looking at how do you turn the area into a tourist area using our historical assets. And there's a lot of them out there. And that is also a focus that we're working on our website. So I haven't talked about it with council, but yep, we've been meeting. And yes, we're cooperating. And yes, we're getting along. And that's really the way it ought to be.
That's what we all should be working on. Thank you very much for the time.
Jim, so now that you've got the lease approved, can you provide us with a timeline so that we can kind of publish that as far as allowing to see people that says, hey, it got approved here, we can expect to see certain things by this timeline, by this date, and kind of keep a.
Once I get a lead time on the equipment, we already had a couple people give us prices to install some different equipment. While we're waiting on the equipment, we'll be contacting the contractors. There'll be somebody that ideally has worked here in the village before. And so won't be anybody new, so we'll get surprised. John will be used to them, Eric will be used to them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right, the next one, I got to do a little bit of introduction to for the people in the audience and for council. I've asked Jeff McMullen from Choice One Engineering to come here to present tonight. And just to give you a little background, over the past 2 weeks, I've had over 8 hours of conversation with the Environmental Protection Agency. Jeff and I have talked on a number of occasions. You have in your packet tonight, so does the audience, they have the contract that we have with Choice One. I'd like to give you a little bit of background before he starts. You also have a timeline that's in your packet, and that timeline deals with when Cleves withdrew from the Hamilton County Stormwater District. I am no expert in this area, so I now have about 7 EPA numbers in my phone. And what I would tell you is that I think the EPA has been educated, and so have we. But when we withdrew back in, I think, 2014, I think it actually happened over a couple of years, I had a conversation. I actually emailed Michelle Flanagan, who is the director for Southwest Ohio. And I said, can I see the reports? Can I see them for what the Village of Cleves has filed? And the answer was, there haven't been that. If you take a look at 2021 on that timeline, that is where the EPA first started realizing we weren't part of the Hamilton County Stormwater District anymore. And there's quite a bit of things that we have to do to be in compliance. That 2021 was caused by a curious resident in Cleves, which I'll leave unnamed. And I spoke to her about that. She mentioned the person by name to me that started questioning what the Village of Cleves was doing and what it wasn't doing. So with that, in 2021, I believe it was, then we had this permit issue that we had to renew. And that's where Choice One comes in, is they are the ones who are managing our stormwater. Well, when I say managing, that's a loose term. They are our consultants on how to manage. So Jeff, if you would come forward, please. I'd like the council to listen to Jeff and he'll give you an overview of the contract and what's coming ahead that we have to do within the village.
Good evening, I'm Jeff McMullen. Part of my speech, I had some dental work this afternoon and still kind of dealing with it. So if you can't understand what I say, just let me know.
If you need more room, feel free to push that button.
And you can
I've
use,
never seen it pushed back that far.
you can use the mic too if you want to.
I'm good. Basically, Choice One was hired to help get you back in compliance with the EPA. And that started out with getting your NPDES permit with the EPA, general permit for a MS4 community, which is what Cleves is. And it's a general permit for the state. And the EPA, you haven't had a permit since 2013, 2014?
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. So that was the first step in starting the process of getting into compliance. In this our contract here, I state what basically needs to happen. There is a stormwater management plan that needs to be developed, and it's basically step by step how to manage the stormwater. What happens when there's a large rain event? There has to be inspections done of all different outfalls to make sure everything's operating the way it's supposed to. There has to be a public education and outreach part of the program, where you're educating the residents on how to maintain stormwater on their properties, possibly rain barrels or other items that you can do to help with runoff. There's also public involvement and participation. That could be a wide range of different things. Helping with cleanups at parks or cleanups along the river or things like that. Illicit discharge and detection and elimination. That's with illegal dumping of materials into the waterway or any kind of companies or whatever illegally discharging hazardous material into the storm sewer system, things like that. Construction site storm water control program. Anytime there's any kind of construction, there has to be measures taken for the EPA for erosion control, controlling runoff, making sure that the calculations are done and the water leaving the site's no greater after it's developed than it was before. Those kind of things, so there's no inundation downstream causing problems. Post-construction stormwater management program. Again, that's just making sure that once the sites are complete, all the vegetation is reestablished. There's methods that are in place that again prevent inundation downstream from the development. And then the pollution prevention, good housekeeping for municipal operations. That can be like street sweeping, just groups going out picking up trash, that kind of thing. There's a whole list of things that go into this manual. And there's an annual reporting that's done based on the manual. So every year, I think April 1st, you have to report to the EPA what you did to address the items in your manual. And you say you did street sweeping once a month or every other week or something like that. You check the box basically for that report. Part of what Choice One is going to do is help establish that manual, help write the manual. But there are pieces that Choice One cannot do. For instance, the public education and outreach. That's something that the village will be required to do, set up a web page or something that there's links to help educate residents on how to handle something. What Choice One will do is, the minimum control measures 4 and 5, which are the construction site stormwater control program and post-construction stormwater management. Anytime there's a development, construction, we'll come out and we'll observe, make sure that the contractor's following the guidelines established in the manual. That is, you using proper erosion control methods. If you keep the site clean, you know, if you got mud tracked out on the streets, you know, and getting with the contractor, making sure that he gets all that stuff cleaned up. That would be part of what we'll do. And then at the end of the construction, let's see, enough, 20 minutes. We'll be out there to make sure everything's buttoned up nice, and we continue to come out after large rain events just to make sure that something doesn't happen with what they put in place. And once all vegetation is finally established, then the site's basically closed out from there. So those are the kind of things that Choice Lawn will be doing. We started on the manual, and I got with Mr. Ray Hall some different items that need to get addressed in the manual, and they kind of fell off from there. So we got maybe a quarter of the manual done at this point. So.
When were you actually hired?
Well, it was, kind of, my signature is in February of last year,
Okay.
but I don't think we actually got started until 2 months later. And I think it was August is when we got the EPA permit that established.
So you have an EPA permit, correct?
Yes.
And we're not in violation, true statement? We're not compliant.
We're not compliant, we're not in
We're not
trouble or
violation.
anything right now, but, there's a report that needs to be done for this year, and EPA has surprisingly been lenient on us and, allowing us to take that time to, instead of, as you stated, providing a falsification, bogus report. Also, take the time and get things together and then make a legitimate report based on the name.
If I could expand on that, Jeff actually sat in a meeting with the EPA that came about of the conversations, because I found out about the April 1st deadline on March 18th and had no access to get into the report because you have to have an eBiz account. And it took a while to get that in place. And as a result of that, that's where my phone calls came in, and Jeff then came down and met. And we also spoke with JMA, and I'll talk more about that later. But so we got input from JMA too, which excuse me, was interesting because I had always thought that JMA took over the stormwater management when we got out of the Hamilton. At least that's what we were led to believe.
Well, that was the plan.
Yeah, well, it didn't happen. And she made it very clear. I asked Michelle Flanagan, I said, okay, so you guys did know whose responsibility was it to say to them, hey, we're on our own? And the comment I got from Michelle Flanagan was, that was the village of Cleves' responsibility, because I thought maybe it was Hamilton County. They said, nope, that falls clearly on the village of Cleves. And so really, I think I appreciated your participation in there because you had to come here pretty early in the morning from across town to be here. And the other side of it is those weren't short meetings. So we got some work to do. There's no question about it. You had a question, Terry.
You know I do.
Yeah, I know you do.
Are they gonna be involved in the remedy for the problems that Duke created on Mount Nebo?
Yes, they are, and he's already been involved. Jeff, you want to explain to them that what happened over there on over by Timber Line?
Yeah, it turned out, for whatever reason, Duke felt that it didn't need to contact Cleves to have the set of plans reviewed. They went to the county and somebody at the county reviewed and approved the plans. I got pulled in on it whenever there was some runoff issues. And after some badgering, we finally got a set of plans and calculations so that I could take a look at them. That's how you got the new ditch line going down to the creek, down to the existing catch basin with the new culverts, to help with that runoff. I understand now there's another issue that is before me.
Yeah, and I think that affects Ted's property and also Cleves Auto Body. There is flooding that is coming across and across Mount Nebo. And Ted had asked me to talk with Duke about, I think they were going to give your daughter $1,500 or something like that to repair a parking area. And John and I went out and met, just so the council and public is aware. John Knuff asked to be involved in this process and was not allowed to. And John, I'll let John explain that to you guys at another time.
Who didn't allow him to do?
Well,
they claim Patriot Act secrecy so that they don't want people knowing what they're doing
So
because they don't want any kind of
but it wasn't just Duke. And I think Ted came in here last year and tried to explain to council that he had asked to be part of that and was getting nowhere with the village. And personally, I think the village could have taken a much stronger stand than what they did. And we're now suffering the problems because we did. Because now that repair had to be made, and we've got an issue over at the substation that's flooding the Cleves Auto Body and other areas across the road. I have video of it. When I went out with John to meet with Duke, they took one look at that. They took a look at a detention pond they believe was built in the wrong location. No water can get to it. And so we have now a meeting coming up with Duke Energy, and I'll forward the email to council where they have basically told us, well, we told the village we weren't going to correct their quote unquote their problem. And I guess I'm going to find out on the 15th of April what that is, because we're meeting with Duke on the 15th.
Because Hamilton County gave somebody a permit.
Well, we don't know that for sure.
Well, we were told by Duke that
Yeah.
the plans were approved.
We
We haven't seen it.
We haven't seen it. We haven't heard you actually.
But I was told by the state that permits, if Cleves required permits, they had to come through Cleves. That's what I was told.
Well, I don't believe they ever got any permits to Cleves. So the issue's still out there, and we'll see where the 15th goes. But there's problems the way it was built.
I guess I'm gonna have to interrupt because I'm gonna ask the question, and I know everybody else is talking, so I'm gonna interrupt. When you say the village did not, who specifically the village? Because I wanna know.
I'll stay.
I wanna hear from this council, if you seem to know, what specifically propagated this. That's what I'm trying to
I
get
can
to.
answer it. It's going to be the same answer he's going to give, because Ted asked me, I think after he found out I was going to run for mayor, he invited me into a meeting over at Skyline, and we were there quite a while. And I sent emails to Mr. Ray Hall, I sent emails to Mayor Myers, and in support of involving him and other residents. And the answer constantly was no. We can't. We're not going to do that. I will say that Duke was no better, because I emailed Duke asking him why, And basically, they told me that they could do whatever they wanted to do, and the village of Cleves had no say, quote unquote. And I believe I had that in email writing. Now, what Mr. Rahal had on that, I can't speak to.
That's all I'm trying to get to, is who specifically Cleves was kind of.
That's the same two that.
May I answer?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sure.
The mayor and Ray Hall both told me, no, I was not going to be involved in, I was not allowed to be involved in a meeting. And I felt I was being stonewalled by those two. Not council, because when I appeared in front of council, because you weren't here and Linda weren't here, it seemed that the faces that I got were complete surprised that we weren't involved in it, and then Cleves didn't know anything about it. And I'm sure, I believe in my heart, that council members knew absolutely nothing that was going on over there, where I think Ray Hall and the previous mayor did, and we're not telling people.
Now, you said John Knuff asked to be involved.
John asked.
And they told him no too.
That's correct.
And I asked to involve John numerous times in my conversations with them, being that he was in charge of maintenance and streets.
Well, Mike Rahal as the village administrator is technically the street commissioner.
See, back
That's
when
part of
we
it.
had, well, back when we had a street commissioner, there was involvement.
Right, but the
And
village
there-
administrator takes that role when you bring on the.
And that's what I'm trying to get to, is where, if we're going to put the nail on the head as to where the problem is occurring. That's all I'm trying to get to.
Harry, I can provide you with emails if you would like.
I've got a ton of these.
Okay,
No more, please.
I got it all in a file.
I'm sure you do. And all I'm trying to do is get crux of the problem. And, you know, again, I'm not trying to be dogmatic or inappropriate. There were certain mechanisms that we had in place, we Cleves, however dismantled it may well be, because when there were issues, that when somebody came to do a cut and fill, there were permits issued. And JMA was supposed
They
to
did the
review
cut and
those.
fill and they did the fill and, yeah, the earth movement and.
Correct.
We had a special permit for it.
And that has been circumvented.
Well, that wasn't part of the stormwater.
It may not well have been.
That was a
but
different
Duke-
service they
but-
provided.
But I'm trying to get to the point where is that Duke came in and did this under cloak and dagger for whatever reasons, claiming patriot. You know, Cleves has the authority. We are an incorporation. They would have had to have gotten the permits, and they would have had to been reviewed.
Well, they weren't very, I don't know what they said to Mayor Myers or Mike Ray.
I understand. And that's all
So they may
smart
very
footage.
well have believed that they didn't have any say. As far as who told John he couldn't be involved, you're gonna have to ask John now. I don't know the answer. I didn't say, John, who said you couldn't do it? He just told me he was not allowed, and he brought up the issue of the detention basin and was told there's nothing you can do about it.
I don't believe that to be that we don't have a recourse.
I'm not arguing that. I'll just tell you that's what John told me. So we got an issue that we got to resolve, and Jeff's going to be there. But Jeff, I got to ask one more question. I think that everybody needs to know, because this monitoring and making sure it happens, a lot of that's going to fall on our service department, John Knuff. Would you explain that to council? And then I would also like to address the street sweeping issue before you leave.
Part of the permit requirement is anytime there's a large rain event, and I think they just increased the amount. So it used to be like anything greater than a half-inch of rainfall. Certain facilities, and I mean outfalls, need to be inspected within 48 hours to make sure that everything is operating the way it's supposed to, the way it was designed. If there's an issue, then obviously it has to be addressed. And that's something, Choice One doesn't have the manpower to come out and check every facility. And John and I had talked about that, that he said that his crew would potentially be able to do that.
Check every facility, what are you talking about? Every building in the building?
No, the, any kind of like, culverts, any kind of outfalls that leave, village property or property that is maintained or owned or operated by the village. Anything like outfalls into the rivers, creeks, that kind of thing.
Morgan Creek.
Morgan Creek being one, yes, the one we're looking at right now as well, but those kind of facilities.
And this is half an inch of rain, is it within a certain amount of time?
It's, that, again, I think they just changed that requirement. I think it's up to like 3/4 of an inch of rainfall within an hour. It should be half inch of rainfall within an hour.
Within an hour?
Yeah, within an hour. But with new permit just came out last month. I think it was, I think there was a change with that. But yeah, that's something that would fall under the village to have that monitoring done.
Would you address the Morgan Creek? We had a grant that was.
Before you get to that,
Oh, absolutely.
on this point, okay, if you're not monitoring that with your manpower, are you helping us identify which of our installations need to be checked as part of your work on our?
That would be, there would be, you would have to be providing inventory. So I don't know what all the facilities are within Cleves. John will probably know that, or there's somewhere within the village, you have the inventory of these outfalls.
You believe that you do? Okay. I'm just clarifying.
It's part of an asset management program.
It's gonna be a lot of what John, I've talked to John about this. Very valid question, Kevin, so I'm glad you asked it. But I know as we work on this manual that we're gonna be developing, all that stuff's gonna be looked at. And that is the thing, I think, right now, just to give you, now, Jennifer Vatter had a different view on this, so I'm gonna give you both sides of the story. She wasn't worried about the EPA, okay? But we also haven't had discussions with her that you and I have had. And she was not involved in the meeting with the EPA. I think your comment was you were shocked that they was lenient. And I think in part, they understood, I think two things. One is maybe they weren't on top of it as much as they should have been. And secondly, I was bugging them so much on phone calls that, I mean, we had 3 or 4 EPA guys in Columbus in the morning, and I found out they actually had a pre-meeting about Cleves the day before, because I was like nipping at their heels, because I'm thinking, what's gonna happen to our village if I can't get this report done, because I didn't actually have the account set up to the day it was due. And so there really wasn't anything we could have done. We were supposed to have it in. Could they ding us? Yes, they could. Now all I gotta do is give them a timeline of when we're gonna have this April 1st report ready for them. So they sort of gave us a special dispensation. But we got a lot of work to do, and the maintenance department's gonna have a lot of work to do. And just to give you an example, unknowing that this was even part of the stormwater, I had had a conversation with John about sweeping our streets. And not knowing that it's supposed to be part of our plan. Just so you know, the village of Cleves streets have not been swept. They're supposed to have been swept. To do the village of Cleves is going to cost us $4,000 to do it one time.
And a contract to be done.
We will have to have it contracted to be done. We'll have to verify that. Now,
And that's every street in the village, correct?
Tell me, every street that needs it in the village, mostly downtown and in your subdivision in particular. They'll get spots of Coleman Woods and over your area where it's needed. But those streets are overall in pretty good shape. If you go down our streets in the downtown area, they got a lot of debris in the streets and they're clogging up the catch basins. And that's all part of the stormwater thing that should have been going on in the village all along that wasn't going on in the village. So there's no question, John and I have had discussions, he's gonna be involved, but there could be additional costs. He may need more help to do what needs to be done.
And part of those facilities are the catch basins and backing them out when they're, or full of leaves or junk or whatever.
Well, you inspect them after the rain to see if they're doing the job.
Right. And if it's
And
plugged
if
up,
there's a blockage, you have to fix it.
Right. What about?
Which we used to do, by the way. Our maintenance department used to do that.
What about coming to 50, on 50, those culverts and so forth that have a tendency to flood? Is that our responsibility or is that?
I don't know that answer.
We cut the grass.
We cut their grass, but again, that's ODOT.
Yeah, I would think that would be the state route.
Yeah, I think they reimburse us for 3 cuttings a year, the state does.
Well, not so much cutting, is the filling up, because I think.
No, I'm not talking, what I'm saying is we cut grass, is what I'm talking about.
And it may fall under the county too, I don't know.
Well, I know there's some letters coming from the EPA to me, but from Hamilton County, I just haven't received them yet. So.
But weren't those, does anybody know if those culverts were like out in front of like Napa and down the ways, weren't those retrenched here as of late? Do you know that?
I don't know that.
The one at the end of the street here that goes under the highway over to Napa, when they redid the lines out here, yes, they cleaned that out on that particular one on the corner. But it's got this much silt in it right now.
I just wonder what the responsibility is of those outfalls. You take tonight, what they're predicting as far as rain, and tomorrow, and a lot of our streets, some of our streets don't have curbing, to divert water away.
And we've got, just if you don't know, maybe you are aware, the only reason I'm aware is Jim Brett told me, we had, I think, 3 culverts that had to be replaced last year at about $6,000 a piece because they had not been maintained properly. So we gotta get out there and take care of this stuff. But I also want, because Jerry, I promised Jerry I was gonna do this. I want to talk about that Morgan Creek ditch, the grant, and what our options are, because that has to be cleaned out too.
Yeah, Hamilton County released some funds, ARPA funds, the COVID money, to help us with stormwater. It was like $3.5 million or something like that. And we put together an application, John and I took some pictures and wrote up a nice little report to send off to the county to get approved for this grant money. And it turned out they provided a email address that wasn't functioning. And we were wondering what was going on, why we hadn't heard anything. And John reached out to the lady's name that was mentioned in the advertisement for the grant and confirmed the email address. And that's when we found out that we had the wrong email address. And Village of Cleves was not the only one that responded to this. Somehow some people, other locations got the email right to the proper people. I don't know how that happened, but they actually pulled everybody's applications that sent to that fraudulent email, that's what I'll call it, and then reviewed them, but we didn't get funded for it. I don't know, I didn't see the final list of who everybody did get funded, but Cleves was not one of them. Mayor asked me to go back and look for other options for funding. There's some OPWC funding coming up. It's a possibility. There's some CBDG. It's hard to say. There's money for that, possibly. But, ultimately, yeah, that, it does need to be dredged out. There are places where the silts and sediments have built up to like a foot below the bottom of the top of the structure. So, but as far as the funding, those are the two options I know of. We have reached out to EPA. They came back with a, WRLSP, it's a water revolving loan fund. But you have to have a match. It has to be over a certain dollar amount. And there is a potential for a principal for forgiveness after a certain period of time. So they'll forgive the principal. So, but, I think the dollar amount is something over 100,000. I think this project isn't in that realm.
Just to dredge it out?
Well,
To
yeah,
do cleanup?
I think we estimated it around $50,000 or $60,000
For Morgan Creek.
for Morgan Creek.
We did it once before when I was the clerk, many years ago. I don't remember how many. And I don't know why we had to pay. I don't think we got it.
Well, from where we looked at it from over on Morgan all the way out to the river. And that price was over $1 million to do that.
Yeah, we just did the area right by North Miami.
Right, and that's what we're looking at doing, and almost $60,000.
Yeah, I'm thinking it was 20 or 30 when we did it, but I don't know.
John and I went out, we got estimates with the contractor. And that's not the price.
Where's Morgan Creek? I'm just curious.
Down there by CT Young. It comes down
Okay.
Morgan Road, alongside Morgan Road.
Okay.
Run off from the hill.
There's like three different bridge culverts.
I know there's one big one right there on North Miami, by North Miami. There's fencing up there.
I work right there. Okay.
You know where it is?
I got it now.
Any other questions you have of Jeff? This contract, just so you guys are aware, was a $10,000 contract with his company, of which I don't even know if we used $1,000 of it yet, have we?
Sent you an email with the running tally. I think it's like $3,100, $3,200.
Okay. So when he comes out or he's consulting, then, those are hours that are billable hours. But there really hasn't been a lot done on it, and we're gonna have to get working on it very quickly here.
This may be a dumb question, but when we were in Hamilton County, stormwater, did the county do a lot of this stuff and we didn't even know it? I mean, what was our responsibility in 2012 before we pulled out?
Yeah.
Because I don't remember the county coming in and doing the inspections and the county.
Well, that's just.
Did they just file a report for us, or what did they do?
Potentially, that's from when I first started this and talking with Mr. Rahal about it, that was the reason for pulling out of the Hamilton County stormwater, was because you felt that you were paying all this money to them and not getting anything in return.
And by the way, the money used to be on your property taxes. Wasn't it like a $10 assessment, or it was am I wrong, Chuck?
It wasn't much.
No, it was a very small amount for stormwater, but it was in the residents' taxes. And the whole purpose
I think
of
they measure
this,
it off the amount of water that comes off the sides of your house. I think they calculate.
Yeah, there's a stormwater utility calculation that's done based on property.
Yeah. It was like an assessment, very small.
I mean, I've seen them at $3.50. It comes on the water bill.
But if I remember one of the reasonings for pulling out of this is that that fee would come off of people's taxes. I don't know how else. It was supposed to be a money saving issue for residents.
But to answer your question, yeah, I mean, the Hamilton County Stormwater was supposed to be doing the inspections and doing the monitoring of the manual, and to my knowledge, we haven't.
Well, if we were part of their district, we were probably following their manual. That's what I'm guessing.
You had mentioned that we need to be going on this, so now that we have our permit, no notices of violations, other than the fact that we're not compliant. So we've been given dispensation, so to speak, or reprieve
For a while.
So do we have an end date on that as to a deadline?
We will probably after the 15th, when we meet, because Jeff and I are gonna meet after the Duke meeting, and we're gonna start working on that manual and take a look at all that's gotta be done, and then I think we can put a deadline on it. That's all the EPA is asking for us to do, and I can assure you that once I understand everything that has to be done, I'll make sure that stuff gets done. I'm not concerned about that.
My question then to you is, do we have enough still here in the till to get done what we need to get done?
Potentially. I don't want to say 100% sure.
It'll be close.
It'll be close, yeah. When I put the pricing together, it was to be able to make sure everything got done with the manual. But since then, we've been tapping into it for other things for so
Then as Cleves, whoever, equip them to carry out the tasks that we're going to be needing.
Well, I met with our website developer today, because one of the things he mentioned was the educational side of that. And she is working on making sure that is a highly visible part of our site. So once he and I are finished on the educational side, that'll be, well, I'll make sure that's in there. We're already inadvertently doing the street sweeping. There are grants in Hamilton County that deal with rain bills. So if we want to put that out there to our restaurant, you can actually get a free rain bill. So there's things that we can do and get in place. I just got to sit with him and understand. He's already sent me a lot of information, including what I asked him to do if you guys decide to go back to a water board at some point. As his company worked with water boards, and you sent me pretty extensive information.
Yeah. Work with Montgomery County, Environmental Services, Warren County, Paramount County. There's Tri-Cities up in Dayton. I can't remember the city off the top of my head. I think Bandai is one of them. And they're like kind of like what these used to be. The water board that manage different municipalities, I guess you'd say. And we work with them all the time.
But is the stormwater district a function of the water? Okay.
No, but if you go back to old documents in Hamilton County, Eric Wing used his name on it.
He was our street commissioner.
Was that why?
Yeah.
Okay. I did not realize he was a street commissioner.
Yeah, he was a street
But
commissioner.
he's also
So was John
sent
Booth for a while.
similar villages and that. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
No.
Yeah, so it's gonna be manageable.
My last question, I promise. Do we have the skill and talent then to do the monitoring of this?
That's to be determined. I can't really answer that. I think once I understand everything's in there, then John and I'll sit down, and if we don't have it, we'll be back to council.
There are training courses, certifications that you can get for MS4 communities, for inspections, maintenance, monitoring, those kind of things that John or somebody else could possibly get. They're not difficult to attain.
Are you a principal with Choice One?
No, I'm just I'm a project engineer. He's one of the guys. Yeah, there's about 80 of us. We're full service engineer firm, survey, civil site design, public.
So this contract that you have with the village, how long was it for?
There was no end date.
So it was $10,000, and when it disappeared, then we
Right.
gotta renew something.
Exactly. That's
Per hour. Okay.
because, we didn't want to put an end date on it because we didn't know what all we were going to get involved with at the time. So it was like, okay, we'll set
That's
it
fine.
not to exceed X, and then when we start to exceed X, then we'll revisit.
So it's a firm fixed fee.
Yeah.
until it runs out.
That's gonna be good.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council? How about the audience out there? Thank you very much. Have a safe trip home. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks for your time, appreciate it.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to have the council consider the fact that there is a motion that I would like you to entertain going into an executive session under Ohio Revised Code 121.22G1 to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official, or the investigation of charges or complaints against a public employee, official, licensee, or regulated individual. And I do have information involving complaints. So I would like to have a motion to go into executive session, and I will share that information for the public, so you know that we will come back into an open session, but we're taking no action tonight. So there's not going to be any type of decision at all, because this is more of an informational meeting that the council needs to be aware of. So do I have a motion to go ahead?
Before you proceed with that, I'd like to have one point of discussion on another issue that will be very brief.
Okay.
Sorry that it's not on the agenda, I didn't advise people, but, and I'm not looking for any motions or votes because Jerry's not here. It's important, but somehow we neglected to discuss replacing our village administrator. That's currently the structure of our government. It's not something we can just idle on. So, I mean, if it's something that we needed to vote on, or I don't know if it was fully considered in our previous discussions. I came away with the notion that most people thought that relifting back to a strong mayor would have been too challenging for the community long term, but I may have misread the word. But at the moment, we're a village administrator and it's just idle. So
No, we need to have probably a
understand.
special meeting in council. I don't think that's an issue that we can hash out on a night when we have all that other business going on. It's too important. So I think we need to have a special session in council.
Well,
unless you're prepared to do it the first meeting in May, but. First of all, statutory villages don't have a strong mayor system. They have a weak mayor system and a strong council system. So that's one issue. But I think there were a few people that wanted to continue on and a few that maybe wanted to look at it. So I don't know that there was any general consensus. Am I wrong?
I don't know. We didn't straw vote or anything, and now we have another member of council, so. I would concede that it merits a full discussion. But if that's the case, then we should be prepared with the information, and I'm saying this respectfully, we should not trust your memory of ORC.
No, and I'm
there
not
should be
telling
materials that, like, the idea that I'm gonna read ORC in that time is preposterous, given my commitments at the moment. But some preparation materials that we're all sharing and agree are authoritative would be appropriate. But I would also suggest that unless somebody's actually moving that we change our form of government, we do have a status quo, and the process will take time, even if, like, with our most diligent trying to replace them. So I would either be in favor of a special meeting or making a very large point of discussion for our very next meeting. So I guess that's what I'm asking for, is that really be the agenda for next time, if it's slated for our next council meeting.
Well, and one of my issues was that when they instigated a village administrator, it was back before I left, 2015. Only one person currently on council, and that was Jared, heard all the information. They heard all the information about what power that person takes away from council, what power that person takes away from the mayor, what duties and responsibilities that person would have. So there's 5 of us sitting right here that never heard any of that discussion. So before we automatically assume, because we had a police department when that issue was discussed, you don't have that anymore. So you don't have a police department to supervise. Things have changed in 8 years. I'm not saying necessarily that we shouldn't have one, but I want to have all facts before I make that decision. I don't just want to assume what information I didn't get 8 years ago. So all I really want, I don't have any knowledge of the ORC, I'm not an attorney, but I would like our attorney to fill us in like they did, like Frank Heil did to the council 8 years ago, that said, because we are dealing with a lot of events and problems right now that stemmed from 8 years of having a village administrator. So I think it's definitely worth evaluating that, because it's costly, it costs us money, and just see whether or not, do we have full-time, do we have part-time? I mean, there's other issues that can be.
That said, we had an administrator that was given full reign without informing council whatsoever. So they were at their discretion to spend money, to authorize contracts, to enter the village into various contracts without council's approval.
And that's what
And
concerns
that's
me.
what the issue is.
The $200,000 police contract on their own.
And subsequently, again, if we're going to go back to that, there ought to be limits of authority. So.
I think we should at
I think
least
there's at
discuss
least a
problems that
council
presented
session that
itself.
needs to
And
be discussed before we.
I think so. That's my.
It's not gonna happen, I don't believe tonight or here, but I think in order to continue that business.
It needs to happen because we extend things for 90 days. Some decision has to be made. I agree.
No, I agree.
And I agree with you, Kevin. I don't know if
So
we
do
can
we
wait
make
till
a
May.
special- Would be best just to table this on itself, a special meeting for this particular
I think
topic?
I think it's an issue that's worth it, personally. Because you gotta also weigh what's in the best interest of water customers. A lot of times that's not even mentioned, it's what's in the best interest of the village of Cleves, but not necessarily what's in the best interest of our water department. It services an area well outside the village, and they have the most to gain by the cost reduction of a village administrator going away and a board of public affairs being formed. They could save over $35,000 a year.
The administrator was also over the water board. I'm
Oh.
sorry, over the water.
Yes.
board.
Your water board went
We're
away.
on- I think we moved on to schedule.
Right.
No, that's fine, I just think it's an important enough issue to.
Let me ask this, because the urgency seems to be on the months scale, not on the weeks scale. Is our agenda so packed for May already that we can't make it principal subject for the regular meeting? CDBG taught us that special meetings are hard, especially on our committee meetings that have been very beat up.
I'm fine with whatever you do, but only one thing I wanted to say is I couldn't agree with you more. It can't just be idling out here. Something has to move forward. And if that means extra meetings, it means extra meetings. And I'll sit through any meeting. I don't have a dog in this fight. You guys have to figure it out. I couldn't agree with you more, Kevin. You cannot just sit here and idle by. Some decision has to be made.
The actual formation of village administrator took months and months and months. And I know that because it was executive session and I was sitting out there. But I will say this, the residents have gone and voted no on 3 levies over the last couple of years. No, no, no. So I think it's worth looking at. That's all I'm saying.
I say we try to do it the next meeting.
I would like that.
Because I'm going to be on vacation next week.
I totally agree with you. These special meetings are trying to get everyone's schedule on.
It's very tough.
Is there,
But not knowing the agenda,
I think the other agenda items can hold. I don't know there's anything that critical. I think the critical stuff that you guys just heard, and what you'll probably hear in executive session, I think the next one, you could probably set it that we're gonna talk about that, and that be the only agenda item. And then if there was something critical that came up, then you look at a secondary meeting. But I think from the standpoint of Kevin's point, you can't sit here idling by. I know how busy you guys are. Just set the main meeting as that meeting, and you're gonna, that's the agenda item. Then,
But we'll pay bills, right?
well, you gotta pay bills, but I'm talking about no guest speakers. You know, just focus on your minutes,
Very well.
paying the bills, and you're gonna talk about what's gonna be in the village administrator, and just let that be your meeting.
Okay. Mr. Merkel, are you capable of preparing some slides or documents to inform that discussion
Not from the authority of the organization. Yes.
on,
The ins and outs
on the
of-
relevant structures of government that are available to us?
Yes.
So if we're statutory or home, I don't know what we're talking. Wikipedia says something different than other authorities.
You're statutory.
Fine.
We're not
But
chartered.
can we be chartered, like, do we have to come up with a charter to do something different, or is it a choice between this and that? I don't know what the options
No,
are.
there's
is the
the
point.
options of the water board administrator with the statutory. But you have to come up with an entire charter to be, obviously, a different type of government.
Okay,
And that's a lot.
and on these points of the authority of each stakeholder here, you've provided something that clarifies each of those roles. What does the mayor do? What does the village administrator? What does the council do in each of these two systems that would be at issue?
Yeah, the council could regulate what the administrator did, or any official of the village of the legislative authority for them. I mean, you can restrict that, you can, I mean, that's more up to council.
Oh, so what I'm imagining is that there would be certain things that are specified, maybe even just as a default for an administrator.
Yes, there are certain things that
And
they
there
are
may be things that
supposed
we
to do.
did specify that we sure have a hard time finding our documents from previous laws passed. So whatever we did at the time would be a relevant piece of that package, I think.
Okay. Yes.
And in that timeframe is reasonable.
Any other questions out there? So I'm gonna go back to, I'd like to have a motion to go into executive session.
A motion to go into executive session.
Well, second by Mr. Williams. Any further discussion? We can call the roll, please.
Mr. Burns.
Yes.
Mr. Walters.
Yes.
Ms. Bolton. Yes. Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Ms. Jennings.
Yes.
Yep, cut it. Thank you very much for attending tonight.
Got it.
I wish I